So our next speaker is Mathias Nørvig, CEO of SYBO, the studio behind Subway Surfers. He is also the co-founder of the Playing for the Planet Alliance and the Sustainable Games Alliance. Mathias sits at the intersection of gaming, climate, and culture, and is a leading voice on how the industry can drive global change. So today, he's asking a bold question. What if the world's biggest games also become the world's biggest force for good? So let's give a warm welcome to Mathias Nørvig.
Amazing. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm seeing the minutes count up. I hope I get the full 20. I've spent a lot of time on stages talking about what we do at SYBO, how we have tried to put meaning into Subway Surfers. And one of the questions I keep getting is, well, what would you do if it was my game? Or what should another game studio do? So this was probably one of the most fun presentations to make myself, because I was trying to say, what if I was the CEO, not of SYBO, but of other big titles? More as a thought provoker. So I also want to say that the games I show, some of them are doing incredible work already. It's not a criticism, it's an idea of what would you inspire those studios to do if the game teams were given more leeway to also explore what good could look like in their games. So the premise is not less fun, not less profitable, but greener, more social, and more conscious. To set the scene, I think it's important that I'm here as an executive. I run SYBO. We're proud of what we're doing, entertaining between 100 and 150 million people every month. I'm also a father. I'm also a partner. I'm also one who really cares about how do we make more studios talk about this? How do we get more CEOs on stage? And how do we make sure that games are not just entertaining, but carry nutritional value? I love the idea, the picture of the jump from Yashim, because the whole sort of how do you play, how do you engage? Leo, my son, here swimming in Lapland, we went from a 92-degree, I'm talking Celsius, 92-degree sauna into minus 32 degree weather, and then he, at the age of 9, made it into the pool. But how do you keep playing? How do you keep expanding that world? These are the 4 games I spent most of my time on. Subway Surfers is the bread and butter of SYBO. We're still downloaded 1 million times every day, 14 years after launch. It means that we are now by far the biggest and most downloaded game in the world. The 20-48, referencing the 48 from before, is a game that I play when I'm flying. Then I play Clash Royale every day, just as a reference, because I think that's a really solid game. I wish I designed that. But it gets me too excited, so I cannot play these games when I tuck my son. If he's waiting to sleep, I have to play something boring, and puzzle games are good for that. We want to use our voice for advocacy. So when we were in the EU a month ago, Ilka from Supercell, Todd from King, Eve from Ubisoft, amongst the 4 of us, we are entertaining 750 million people every month. That number is insane. And sometimes we forget the reach that we could do if all these games that I'm about to show would make more of a change. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention my co-author and co-host of the Good Game Club podcast. Go find the link. Some of the people that you've seen on stage, we have on the podcast. We're constantly recruiting more episodes and launching them. We also wrote a book called Gaming for Good. Jude Ower is thankfully prioritizing family this week. Her son is performing at the Disneyland, so she would love to have been here. This idea started with Civilization 6 when they introduced pollution. I don't know how many have played Civilization. A third. That was the game I played. Civilization 1 was the game I played so much that my mother said, I think you are playing too many games, too much. You're spending too much time on games. You cannot make a living. And look at me now. Civilization 1 was all about building fast. And what was interesting with number 6 was that that was the first part of the franchise where they said, well, building comes at a cost. And as a game player, acknowledging that and balancing it means that you actually get more out of the game and it gets closer to reality rather than feeling it as a limitation. So the game strategy you would pursue changed because pollution came in as a vector. So what if we could do a greener or more social future, more cohesion, and encourage some actions? I took a swing at these 10 titles plus our own, because of course Subway Surfers could also do more. And then basically I threw it into to PowerPoint's wonderful way of stylizing. So it made a mess out of it. If we start with Pac-Man, we all know Pac-Man, it's about chasing the dots. But what if in a Subway Surfers we do with the world tour, every 3 weeks you visited a new world, not just the stylized version, but for every dot you picked up, you also cleaned up, you also made the world from broken to clean. You could visit the Great Barrier Reef, you could visit the Amazon rainforest. It could be stylized in a way where doing more also meant that you're seeing that actions matter. You make things more green. I'm going to do a quick run through because I have 10 titles. Tetris could also be inspired by real places on Earth. One of the thoughts that I had was if you actually imagine that once you have cleared enough tiles, the background also started becoming greener, lusher, and seeing that grass or growth came with either special tiles or special badges, special ways of showing that you have done something, that you're oriented, you wanted to play the green mode, basically. I think we've all played Super Mario. There's definitely some parts of the originals where you would spend time trying over and over again to come over a certain hurdle. But what if what you left behind also was greener or more just by either planting seeds or seeing that the environment changed because of your achievements? The whole idea, and we'll get to some of the more tricky implementations in a bit, is that if you could make sure that those who watched you play or those that saw your achievements would also see that you chose the green path, then that's encouraging them to also change their actions. Candy Crush. The thing in Candy Crush is it's a very single-player oriented game. Your own saga map and your own progression. One of the things that the people that play those games, and I do when I talk Leo, is that you also have a community, you also have a group or a guild where you can gift things or do things. But what if it wasn't just who you're directly linked to, but there were some friend candies or some kindness candies or something that when you use them, then you actually also send kindness into the world. How do you make kindness a normal thing or sort of visualized in a game that is inherently silly, crushing candies before Candy Crush? Everyone else would have imagined a hammer and something else. But how can you make kindness as part of that core design? Minecraft is doing a ton of stuff on education. So this is not to say that they should shy away from that. But the environment is very fixed, unlike what nature actually is. Trees grow, rivers forge new paths, and you could imagine a world where everything that you do also impact how the environment changes over time. And that means that if you were playing Minecraft and you could see that the areas that you tended to also became better. You can plant a few things, you can watch a few things, but what if there was also inorganic things that happened because of time passing? That's, for me, very fascinating. Then we get to the trickier ones. For those of you, I stopped playing GTA after GTA 2. I liked the top-down view and the 2D version, the handbrake turns and those things. But Grand Theft Auto has a huge following, and hopefully also the sequel, or the number 6, coming soon. What's interesting for me is that's inherently about killing and living a player fantasy that's very unlike what the players probably do in real life. But the hardcore criminals that this game depicts actually care quite a lot of their community and will have an aunt or will have a grandmother that they visit or bring food to or do things. So why is that not part of this game? Why are you only interested in the next sort of police chase or that? Why is there not a community where you make sure to also visit your aunt, make sure to call your grandmother, make sure to bring that extra gift? If that could be part of it, if you ignored your own area, then you should be penalized in that game. Because the hardcore criminals, I know very few, how I imagine them, they would definitely take care of their own area. They would make sure that their shops are safe. They would make sure that their own grandmothers are well tended to. And I think that would be wonderful if that was part of that game. That way the city would become another character. Recently in Copenhagen, we had the Pokemon Go Fest, and I saw one of the main hotspots was outside of my apartment, which was wonderful because you could see a lineup of people with power banks. So you knew that these are finding Pokemons. Many of them traveled from, I'm in Copenhagen, many of them traveled quite far to get to Copenhagen. Because you could get a special Mewtwo, and you could get other things. But what if Pokemon was taking it one step further and actually making people go into the forests? Why are all the cool Pokemon spots in the city center? Why not say everyone should go to their wild habitats? They should go to their forests, they should go to their parks, and they should go further away from where they are, because then the kids would encourage their parents, let's go somewhere else. Let's go because I want the special Mewtwo. Let's go on a safari in our own town. It will also mean that you could have special Pokemons appear in areas you encourage people to go to, not just to go to the central places, but go to more remote places. And then Roblox, which my son is not playing yet. He's too young, in my opinion. But the community DNA and the fact that this game has so much data on player behavior, I would love if there was a community DNA score based on how welcoming, how collaborative, how creative, and how inclusive it is. Because that would not be determined by the moderator, but by the player behavior. If you can imagine, as a parent, also showing that these are the games I want you to play, because these are the ones that inherently is about celebrating each other, not stealing. So if you see the stealing a brain rot, which is probably the reason why my son is not playing it, it's very much about disrupting and destroying. That's not how I want to wire his brain. But if there was a game about helping, actually Grow a Garden is a really good example of a game that is about growth and nurturing and doing it. That means if you could make that change in Roblox, you could, by being a great community, be able to become as valuable as a great game designer. And if you could make that change, I think that's super inspiring. And then I like that PowerPoint changed the name to Oblox. But, Fortnite is again a fixed environment. I think they're doing a great job of including other IPs. They're doing a lot of things. But what if the winning team or the winning person in each of the battles could make one change? Imagine sort of a pop-up of saying, would you like this or would you like this? Because you won, so you get to choose that now we want to make the environment a bit more greener. We want the characters to be a bit more diverse. We want this feature to start. And by winning, you get to affect more. Then you encourage people to still do their best. You don't take away any of the fun, but you make sure that their choices matter and that they choose what they want. And again, with any game, people also choose destruction. They will sometimes choose to be what they're not. The healthy escapism for me is super important, but encouraging, as they do, the environments are very green and lush, but what if you could affect it through winning? And this is probably my favorite we share group with Riot, so it's also me treading on thin ice, suggesting what other studios in the Tencent group should do. But in League of Legends, how many have played League of Legends? It's a bit more hardcore in this crowd. The 7 of you can meet afterwards. It's a 45-minute session. It's quite target-oriented. You have to win this session. There is an MMR, so you have a score for how good you are of fighting. But there's, again, enough data in that game to actually do a leadership ranking. You could start seeing who are consistently making their team players better, who is consistently making good comments, who's supportive. Back to Clash Royale, which is my pocket game of playing if I have 5 minutes between meetings. I would love if it was penalized when people taunt or are evil in their comments, when they win and they make the yawning emoji. After the 5th yawning emoji, it should say, "You suck, play with the others that suck." Because that would be a much better game experience for those of us who send hearts and say, "Well played and good luck." And I think over time, if you imagine that those big games with a lot of concurrent players would guide the behavior towards kindness, you would see a lot more kindness come from it. And therefore, you could also have the highest ranked players in the world not only being the ones who are best at shooting or best at battling, but also the ones you would look up to as a leader, you look up to as a person. Subway Surfers is our own. We've done so many things with Subway Surfers. We've had campaigns of what is your nation's best vegetarian sandwich. So we said, what is the best plant-based alternative to food in your country? We've had, when you run through the world, it comes lusher and greener. We've had worlds where we visited, where we made sure to talk about the life below sea. We've talked a lot about inclusion, diversity. We have a roster of 300 people you can find yourself. You can have everything in Subway Surfers. But we are also limited to what we can do in one update. One of the thoughts when I sat and I thought, okay, now I'm provoking all the other studios, we should also take a bit of our own medicine, was for Subway Surfers specifically, what if there was a twin version of our Earth? And every time we go to a new city, so we go on our world tour to a new city every 3 weeks. Right now we're in Paris. And I encourage everyone to play. It's a wonderful game. What if people playing that game could then have an opinion on what Paris should do? So you imagine the 100 to 150 million people either co-funding or at least with their opinions guide that, hey, we wish that there were more green areas in Paris, or we wish that the community did more of this, so that by taking one city at a time, you also had a global opinion board or a global collective of players saying, we think this is important to make a city livable. Copenhagen is every year ranked as one of the most livable cities, so I think we know what we talk about. But the global players with their opinions on cities that I might not have been to would be super interesting to hear. And that way we could actually make our game into the biggest optimism simulator where everyone would encourage a better future for the cities we talked about. I have a few more minutes. I think the reflections and the learnings from doing this exercise is that, of course, all of this is tricky. It's super hard to make games. Everyone in the room who are game makers know that it's incredibly challenging, that it's 1 in 1,000, 1 in a million that makes it. Subway Surfers is, of course, one of the only mobile evergreens. But you need to keep fun first. You need to keep it front and center, and you need to make sure that you don't force feed your agenda into something that is not native. At the same time, and this is the counter argument and why I'm taking the stage whenever I can, it's a bit too easy to say anything nutritional breaks the fun. Because so many game makers will say, we can't do anything. Our game is just Candy Crush. Our game is just Fortnite. And whatever you put in will make it feel less fun. I believe that's a shortcoming. So how do we make sure that people think that step further and does one more action? I think it's important to build on human nature. We have a lot of these things about curiosity, mastery, creativity, competition, belonging, and freedom. And the well-being of the players is also making sure that what they wanted to do anyway is rewarded. My GTA example of having the hardcore criminal also visit their aunt with some blueberry pie, for me, would be a fun twist, because the player would actually think, hey, wasn't I just shooting bad guys over here or running into stealing cars? well, this is part of being a hardcore villain, in my imagination at least. The third thing is ask what if the thing that players already love doing also made the world a little bit better? So are there things where the chase in Pac-Man, if the Tetris blocks, if that feeling of completion or of cleanup could link to something in the real world? And the kindness candy in Candy Crush for me is an example of how do we make people more kind through play? How do we make sure that that link is made when you complete a game session? You also think that step further because you turn off your screen, but then you meet real people, and how do you transfer that kindness into real world? And therefore, I hope that we can make goodness a competitive advantage. And again, it's not about these 10 games doing this tomorrow. It's the fact that if we can make any single feature that inspires people inside this room, or hopefully also people outside of this room, to make more green, social, or just features, that would be super meaningful for me. Thank you so much for your time.